Hi, I'm Elena Georgiou. Welcome to the Global News. I will gladly welcome you here if you want to be my guest and share your journey or join me in different discussions. So today we have an exciting topic, child emotional neglect, and I'm here with my guests to share our insights, experiences, and parent advice. So first, I would like to introduce my guests to you and let them know that I'm grateful that they're here with us. Welcome, Patricia. Welcome, David.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for being here. Welcome, Nicole.
Hi, Elena. It's lovely to be here.
All right. So I will start by making a small introduction about our topic. So child emotional neglect is when parents fail to meet their child's emotional needs. So affection, support, and attention are ignored, and neglectful parents usually come from families where their parents ignored or neglected them as children. So we're all here to change this. So one example of emotional neglect is a child who tells their parent they're sad about a situation that happened in school. Instead of listening and helping their child cope with this, the parent ignores it. Maybe the parent is busy. So the child learns that their emotional needs are unnecessary and they stop seeking support. So I'm going to give my example. As a child, I was left alone to deal with my emotions and I had no help to cope with my challenges. And the worst part was that I couldn't open up or express my needs or connect with others or ask for help. So I was taught to be a good girl and to obey rules. And growing up, everyone else's happiness was very essential to me. So trying to fit in and be a good girl, I worked hard to please those around me. And unfortunately, all this left me carrying deep insecurities about myself. And by identifying as myself as a good girl, I was limiting myself and trying to fit in. I wasn't allowing myself to be fully seen and stand out in my naked truth and make my own decisions. So that's what happened to another girl I was called to support, and she was forced to study a specific bachelor's degree in a university because her parents forced her to. So long story short, she went for a few months and returned back very depressed. So the parents asked me to help them out. So I went, and the girl was in her room, refusing to come out and talk. And I went to her room. So I tried to help her open up and talk to me. She finally did. And the issue was that she was forced to do something she didn't love. And her passion was art. And she took a lot of art lessons and she showed me her drawings. So the girl told me that her parents took her to an advisor. And this advisor advised them that by studying art would not bring her food to the table, meaning she wouldn't find a job. So the girl obeyed the rules and studied something she wasn't interested in, didn't love to do, but was promised that with this degree, she would get a job. So I asked her a question, is art your passion? And she replied, yes. So we finally convinced her parents to study art. And unfortunately, this family neglected the emotional side of their child. And this child was heartbroken and depressed because her parents weren't listening to her, but they were listening to that advisor. And as a good girl, she obeyed her parents' rules. And the end result, she was unhappy and realized that she only wanted to be fully seen and make her own decisions. And she finally did. With my support, I managed to bring a huge smile to her face that day. And the parents thanked me also. So my message to our viewers that are parents is that an advice to you is that sit with them and listen to them, ask them different kind of questions. One question can be, what is your passion? What do you love to do? What do you want to study? That's an excellent question to ask them. and give them the responsibility to make that choice. Then allow them to choose according to their passion, to do what they love to do, and just let them know that whatever they decide to do, to make sure that it will make them happy. Because if they follow their heart, they will feel fulfillment. So spending quality time with your children is much needed. It doesn't have to be long hours. I know you have busy schedules. Just sit down, listen to what they want you to know, and help them in this transition. And it's very essential to be there for them. And they want you to be there for them. And also they want you to become their cheerleader in this journey. So this is my example that I wanted to share. So I want to go back now to my guest and back to David. David, do you want to share something with our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? It's the, you know, there's no, we think there's no rule book. Like there's no, children don't come with an instruction manual. So as you said, that we do the best that we can based on what our experiences, right? And so, however, typically how we were treated and the rules, let's say the rules of engagement in our house, we often, not always, but we often bring those behaviors forward unconsciously. And again, I remember growing up, we were, I'm one of 6 in the immediate family, but there was 11 of us in total with half siblings. And and it's my biological mother she had lots of challenges. Had to start having children at the age of 16. My father worked away quite a bit, so my 11-year-old brother looked after us because she'd be gone for days at a time. She had all of her own, lots of challenges in her life, which made her negligent as a parent. Right. And, and it wasn't traumatic. It was unsupervised. Right. We didn't have a role model. And different men would come in and out of the house. So, we lived in this interesting environment. But it's because people were, let's say, relatively angry in that environment because they weren't happy and they would lash out. As little kids, you learn to become very sensitive to the emotions of others. Right. So you don't have the intellect to understand what's going on, that mom needs therapy, dad needs an anger counselor. You don't have the intellect, but emotionally you're very aware, so you know when to be quiet and small, and you know when it's safe to come out, right? And that's that it's that hypervigilance that you develop as a child. Now the upside of that is that as you go through life, you get to read people really well, but unfortunately, it's being hypervigilant inside your life doesn't give you any power, right? You learn how to withdraw consistently inside your life. So, so that experience, I mean, I didn't really pull myself back until I was about 28. And that's when I actually moved back from Portugal, moved back to Canada. So that emotional guarded response that I developed when I was younger, I used that through most of my life. And, and though there's some benefit to it, it's kind of like you were speaking, Elena, about always being the good person, right? So never having the courage to say anything, because anytime the environment seemed volatile, you would step away. You hide and become small, right? Just to be safe. And it's hard to develop yourself in a world because you need courage to be alive. You need courage to succeed. You need courage to have hard conversations. So when it came to my own children, it's just of which I had 3. It's one of the real key things was, I was very honest with them. I was very honest with them about my past, and very honest with them what I'd struggled with, and I let them know that it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay to make mistakes. Obviously the certain things I omitted from my lifestyle when they were younger, right? I didn't give them the whole insane story of my journey, but I wanted, I became very aware of my own emotional range. And, if I'm tired, I'm exhausted because I ran my own business for many years. And I became very conscious of my irritation showing up in my behavior towards my children. And became very, very conscious of that, and that became one of the safeguards that I had to. For example, on the way home, I've been gone for 13 hours. I'm tired. I know I'm going to walk into a house at that time with a tired wife and angry and tired kids. So I knew I was exhausted. So I would take a B vitamin. I would eat an apple and I'd drink some water. And that 20-minute drive home, I would actually get myself ready and prepared to meet my family, rather than going home tired and exhausted and being grumpy at the door. So a big part of it is that, I can't remember who said this, but somebody once said, if you have a birth certificate, somebody has messed with your life. It's just what it is. And I'm not saying that our lives aren't tragic and are horrific and people have gone through unmistakable horror in their life. I mean, it's an unfortunate side effect of living on this planet, for so many people. But but that's not the end of the story. And the burden of responsibility for a parent, if you bring a child into the world, is that you really have the power. I mean, we're designed to do hard things. I'm an athlete, so every time as an athlete, if I apply pressure to my body and I consciously put it under stress, it becomes stronger. If I fast for 3 days, my immune system becomes stronger. If I study something that's challenging, my capacity to think and to develop new ideas becomes greater. We're made to do hard things. Like humans are we're very, very tough. And I think if we understand that the tragedy of our lives, that the things that we live through, it's not a defining characteristic. And quite often, the people that have gone through the most challenging parts of their life are the most generous and the most courageous people you'll meet. So, all I can say is that, as parents, and you have these, beautiful young things you bring into the world, there's a burden of responsibility. And I think we can take our tragedies and turn them into triumphs and really powerful tools, so that we ensure that we don't subject our children to the unfortunate things that our parents, who probably did not have the tools that we have access to, do not have these conversations we have access to now, that we can give our children an entirely different way to look at the world, right? And like I said, at the end of the day, humans, we can do hard things.
Okay, Nicole, can you share your example about neglect? The emotional side.
Yes. Okay, so like just as David was saying, is that when I became a mom, I wasn't really conscious of everything that I had gone through as a child and how it had affected me in adulthood. And I had these two beautiful little babies in very hard circumstances, and realized how hard stuff we can actually do when we're under stress. And I can remember one day I was sitting at the dining room table. Maybe I was eating. I had just come in from work, and the two little boys, they must have been about 4 and 2 years old at the time, were super hyperactive, running around, jumping and everything. And I just lost it. I didn't think about it. It was just like an automatic response. And I said, right, you two, this is enough. You just go up to your bedrooms right now. And the older one took his little brother's hand. And as they were walking up the steps, the little heads bent like this, he suddenly turned around and he looked me in the eyes and he said, Mom, don't you love us anymore? And that was like a knife in my heart and a huge wake-up call to me. And I was so grateful for this little boy who can actually express and say what he's thinking, because so many children just hide it inside of themselves and they don't express them. But he's really good since this young age, been really, really good at expressing things. And it was then that it hit me that, I have to change something, that this way of parenting, I didn't like it as a child, and I don't want to pass these messages on to my children. And that was when I really began to start to learn about who I was. And in that journey that I went through, I realized a lot of what my issues were today came from childhood. And I just thought to myself, why, if this why can't I give my children a better childhood than what I had? And maybe my childhood was okay, but it was the way I had perceived my childhood. And, I didn't want them to perceive their childhood as that their mom doesn't love them because she's had a hard day, because she just wants 5 minutes of peace. And they're excited, probably that mom's at home and just can't control themselves and jumping all over the place. And she yells and sends them up to bed. She doesn't want them there with her.
Right.
And, that is when I started coming on this journey, and I started to learn about all of these things and who I was and what I can do to change. And I started, learning about children and how to talk to them in a way that raises their self-esteem. And it's just small things that we can do and change in the way we talk to them, rather than, and it doesn't have to be anything major. And I think the biggest and the most important thing of all is that we keep the connection strong, that we need these connections of communications to be there. And that is what builds, because what is right now like a huge thing in the life of a child might be nothing for us. But if we don't listen to the little things that they're telling us, they're never going to tell us the big things. And it's so important that, we keep those communications open. And, there are some ways, because sometimes, life gets busy and we're busy running around and we don't even realize that we're neglecting our children. And there are signs in their behavior that we can have as warning signals. And hey, maybe I've got to bridge something here. Maybe I've got to find some time to spend with my child and to listen to it. And we can see this in the children's behavior, like a lot of parents talk about back talk. It's the child trying to assert himself. It's trying to make himself seen, hear me, see me, when they stop listening, they shut you out. Maybe it's because we've shut them out first. And so once we can look at the child's behavior, that behavior has so many messages for us. And if we find out what the need behind the behavior is, then we can start building these strong connections again.
That's exactly correct, Nicole. And what I think is sometimes our children are our teachers. I mean, so we can go back and it's like their behavior, let's not say bad behavior, they're doing something that we don't like, let's say. But it's like it's a pathway for us to remember what happened in our lives and correct it. It's like there are teachers, like maybe sometimes when they're doing, making noise or whatever, maybe they're triggering us something that we need to come back to us and see what it is. And because there isn't any manual for parents, and sometimes people say, they buy books to see how they can become parents, but there isn't one explicit, so they can explain everything, every behavior for the children. But I think children are there to, like Nicole said, her example is very obvious that she needed maybe something to see in herself.
Definitely. And I also find, Elena, that the children don't come with a manual. They're not a washing machine or a fridge or a computer or anything. And really and truly, there is no one solution fits all. What works with one child definitely might not work with another child. But I think, as you say, that if I take a look at myself and see, why is this triggering me, and calm myself first, I can get in touch with my internal guidance system. I can get in touch with my instincts. And when I'm in touch with my instincts, I can meet my children's need. So in a way, the child manual is already inside of us, and we just need to activate it.
Well, it's interesting. Our conversation before we started the recording was around culture, and if you think about how the expression that it takes a village to raise a child. So I think that the ability to ask for support if you're in a place where you don't have family around. And nowadays, people will move, hundreds of miles or thousands of miles away from their family for reasons of career and finances. And so they're disconnected from that in a massive support system, and they may find themselves in a place where it's not there. And I know over the years I've heard that from different women where their families in Johannesburg, or their families back in Italy, and they're here kind of by themselves, and they're trying to figure it out. One of my employees was from Brazil, and of course moved up here without their family. The family are thousands of miles away, and it's challenging, right? So I think the ability to realize that if you're struggling and you feel like you're drowning in this process, that it's really okay to ask for help. Like, it's not a sign of weakness. We are designed to work as a community, and because that's been so altered, in this modern world, that we feel like we're failing, and it's not. It's just we live in a very surreal, artificial environment, and sometimes you do ask that. It's important to ask for help, for sure.
Yeah, we had a great example of that today with my youngest son. We had gone to take the dog, which is his dog. He likes the dog, and he says it's his dog. And we had taken the dog out for a walk, and we came back home, and I said to him, because it was very, very hot, and I had a whole list of things to do, and we had gotten a kitten, but the kitten just loves being outside. But I want to make sure that the kitten's okay and spend some time inside. So I said to him, give me the dog, and please could you go into the field to find the kitten for me? And he said to me, I'm not doing that. And I said, but why wouldn't you do that? You love the little kitten too. We've got to see if she's okay. And he says, no, because when we got the kitten, you said that the kitten's going to be your responsibility. And so you have to go and look after the kitten. And I said, yes, but the dog is your responsibility. And yet last night when you forgot to feed it, I fed it for you. And he got so mad, he couldn't hear me. And then I got mad at him. And we both came into the house, and I said, fine, if you can't be responsible for your dog fully 100%, then maybe we can't have the dog. My ego roaring. So, but the whole thing, I went in the kitchen, I started lunch, I did my breathing, I did my tapping, I did some tapping to calm down, and he lay on the sofa, little tears coming down his face now. And, it gave us a brilliant, though, opportunity, because I went there and I said to him, look, I'm so sorry I shouted. I said, it's not your fault I shouted, it's mine. The anger is in me, and it got activated. And next time, what activated me was you telling me it's your responsibility. So I said, but this has given us a great opportunity, because it's my responsibility to have you children. I decided that I wanted children, and it's my responsibility to look after you. I said, but when I needed help, I brought my mom. Your grandmother came to help me. And when she had to leave and I still needed help, then I got a nanny for the family, and the nanny was able to help and support me. I said, it's not wrong to ask for help. Exactly. And yes, the dog is your responsibility, but you are responsible for the dog. So that means when you can't take care of the dog, you need to ask for help. Exactly. And that is being responsible for the dog. And he just sitting there listening to me. So it came up with a lovely way of him learning something, that just because you don't have to do it alone. And part of being responsible is being able to ask for help when you need it.
And the other part is that our children are kind of supporting us to get to know ourselves more. And it's not them to learn things. It's each of us to get to know each other, ourselves. And this is happening also with relationships or marriages. You come together with somebody that you can get to know yourself. That's the main thing. And share love. And the same goes with our children. That's what we're doing. we get to know ourselves. And we have Patricia now. Hello, Patricia, can you hear us? Hi, Patricia.
Yes, I can.
Welcome, welcome. We're having a discussion and it's your turn. Can you please share examples about child neglect? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, definitely child neglect. It's very common, especially nowadays in this 21st century. It is not a new phenomenon, but it is becoming more rampant because people are getting more busy not actually with serious issues, but sometimes just busy with the new technology that is out, the mobile applications and other things. You see, for example, it's very common to find, say, a mother who has a baby and cannot attend to that little baby because she's browsing, she's on social media and all of that. And it's really a whole lot. But the example I want to share with us is a very rare one. Rare, I mean, in this, our era, but not also uncommon. It is very common, but rare in this era because it doesn't have to do with a new technology or this or that, but it has to do with, it is so common in the African culture where they live a community life. Community life is so common. The other day, I was with a colleague of mine who is going through a lot of depression and trauma, and she was telling me she's actually undergoing healing, and there are some therapies that I've prescribed, and she's constantly on it. And so she just burst out. She had this outburst of anger, telling me that there are some things that her mother, for example, did. And even though her mom is dead, she would never, ever get to forgive her mom. And I asked her exactly what, even though I know, but I wanted her to talk it out. And she repeated to me, she said, she's going through all what she's going through today. Her siblings are suffering as well because they never had that bond, that motherly bond with their mother, that their mother gave birth to just 3 of them, 3 girls. And for some reason that she has never been able to apprehend and comprehend, her mother had to just share them amongst her other siblings who were sisters, and they were this maltreated because even when they used to complain to their mom, that's their biological mom, that they are so much ill-treated by her sisters, her mom would say, no, it's my sister. She's just training you to grow up a powerful and hardworking girl. My sister cannot ill-treat you and all of that. And they went through so much, so much. One of them, I think amongst the 3 of them, she's the only one that actually finally went through school, through, you know, some kind of ways, but the others got pregnant. They did not even go through school. They're just living scattered lives until today. They too do not even know how to love each other. And their children that they've given birth to are with this, my colleague now. They too, because of what they inherited, the child neglect they inherited from their mother, they too do not know how to take care of their own children. And this particular colleague of mine, because of knowledge, because of her educational background or career, and because of what she's been able to achieve or know with her being with me, with the training and healing process, she's been able to overcome a lot of that. And she has actually taken over these, her sister's children that have also been neglected. And she tells me that, you see, Auntie Pat, I'm so angry because it's the same pattern. I see the kind of treatment my mother gave us. She neglected us. This is exactly what my two sisters are doing now. They've had children. They too do not care. They don't bond with their children, and they are suffering because of that. But it's like they don't know. She now knows because I've opened her eyes. Because of her awareness and consciousness, she's now realized that all what she's going through, the trauma, the depression, anxiety, is because of the child neglect she had. And so this is a vivid example that I really want to bring forth beside the regular or the universal child neglect that we all are exposed with, not only children, but even adults. Sometimes you may be with your spouse, and your spouse, because we are all children, will never outgrow our parents. A woman or a man of 80 years is still the child of the mother, even of 90 years old. And so you may even be with your spouse, you're talking with your spouse or with friends, as long as he or she is having a phone, working on the phone, and doesn't place that phone down to give you eye contact, to discuss with you one-on-one, is also neglect. It is an indication, communication by sign language, that you're not worth it, that you're really not worth it, or the conversation is not worth it. So I really wanted in this episode to bring out that particular example of a child neglect, especially in the African culture, where the Africans live community lives, and they don't understand how a sister or brother may ask for your child, and you refuse to give your child to go stay for holiday or to grow up with him or her. Because of that love, because of that community life, we sometimes erroneously or ignorantly neglect our own children, and it has a lot of consequences, short and long-term consequences, and it may be very, very mortal. It may be very mortal. So we should try to avoid that. We should try to grow up our children, to be with them, to always listen to them as well, in as much as they are living even with us. We should be able sometimes, even when we're going out and they say, oh, mommy, I don't want to stay with uncle, I don't want to stay with auntie. We should not neglect that. We should pay specific particular attention to all of those, because the child may be abused by that particular uncle or aunt, and the child maybe does not have a more proper or appropriate way of communicating that, and his own subtle way, his or her subtle way of saying, I don't want to stay with this, I don't want to stay with that. You neglect it, you just hush the child or yell at the child and go. It is really, so we should always give ears to our children and learn to stay with them, teach them our own ways, inculcate to them our own values that we've grown to know or to acquire, and not just leave them exposed in the world. That is my contribution.
Thank you, Patricia. I really like what you said. And especially the eye contact. It's not only to listen to your children, but the eye contact. It's like sit down with them and look into their eyes and see what it is. Maybe they're sad, that you can see them, because some children, like me as a child, I couldn't express myself. I had a hard time doing it. So maybe your children, I'm speaking to the viewers, maybe it's good to sit with them and have eye contact and see if you see sadness in their eyes, that means you have to go back to you also and check, maybe you're feeling sad and you're projecting that to your children. Or maybe something happened to school, yes, but maybe we as parents have to start, healing ourselves and parts of us, because maybe you're projecting this sadness in them or anger, and that's why they're behaving the way they are. I mean, we have to come back to us and check what exactly is happening with us at that time. And
You're
I don't
right.
know if anyone wants to share anything about this that I've said.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about social media, right? And I watch mothers with new babies walking their babies in a pram, and they're on their phone and they're pushing their child. Or they see the parents at the park and the child's on the swing, and somebody's, the dad's on the phone pushing the child. Or the children are playing and the parents are sitting with their coffee and they have their phone. So when you talk about neglect, it doesn't have to be violence. It just has to be neglect. Like you're neglecting, you're not paying attention, you're not a part of that child's experience. And and it's, and I think people would find that a bit of a harsh judgment, but I didn't grow up with it, right? So we interacted with our environment, and so the more technology, right, for all the benefit I think technology gives us, for every one thing that it gives us that's of a benefit, I think it creates 3 problems in return. And and I mean, look at this technology here. We're able to communicate through thousands of miles, which is wonderful. But I think being able to have a mature relationship with technology and realize that technology is wired to keep you addicted to it, right? The same technology they use in Las Vegas on the slot machines is the same technology they use on our phones. It's the same idea. They need your eyes there, right? They need your eyes in the software. So I think it's the maturity of the adult to realize, that if you do have a child, and and Patricia, you made so many great points along the way about, like, pay attention, pay attention to the child, just be aware of those things there that, if you dismiss them so easily, then you're missing out on great ways to learn, first of all, great ways to bond, but you're also potentially missing out on abusive situations your child might be in circumstances of areas where you trust. We implicitly trust the school system. That's kind of under question now, that we should not be so trusting. We should really want to know what's happening inside the school system. And we're trusting our, aunts and uncles, or we're trusting our family. Maybe blindly, like we just don't know. So it's not that we have to live in fear and mistrust everyone, but we do have to pay attention to these precious things we call our children, and make sure that we're very attentive to every environment that they're in, including with us, that we're really present to everything that's going on with them.
Nicole, do you want to share anything before we close up?
Sure. I just wanted to say that a good way that you can see, talking about the eye contact and what your child is believing about itself, as a result of your neglect or your love, or how much you were there and how much you're connected to it, is to ask it to go to a mirror and look itself in the mirror and see, 1, can it meet its own gaze in the mirror? And 2, can it say to the child in the mirror, I love you? Because that is something very, very difficult. If they have a low opinion of themselves, if they think that they are not worth it, if they think that they deserve whatever's going on in their lives, they won't be able to look themselves in the eye and to be able to say that I love you. It's a good thing, an indication for a parent, just to see where their child is, because sometimes they're too small to express things to us, and to let us know what's going on.
Okay, and that's a good practice. I do that too. I even do that too at this age.
Definitely. Well, we've all got our little children inside of us, don't we?
Yeah, my inner child wants me to do it, so I do it, and especially when I'm not feeling good, and I go to the mirror and I have discussions with with me. So yeah, and I try to turn afterwards all this, whatever happened, and it's making me feel sad or uncomfortable. And then I try to turn this around by saying different, I am powerful, the I am words. I am powerful, I'm beautiful, I'm whatever. And I say at the end, I love you. So I
Very
empower
powerful words.
myself, because if we don't empower ourselves, we cannot, expect, from maybe your husband or your whatever, or your neighbor or your sister or your mother to tell you that you have to empower your own self. And we have to teach our children to do that also by themselves.
Yep. Turn that critical voice in our heads into a good, supporting, positive one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Does anyone want to share anything before we close up?
Yes, Elena. I would want to say here that child neglect, just like every other neglect, sometimes can really be overrated because it doesn't, it's sometimes not physical. It's not like a physical abuse that you inflict on someone, like a sexual abuse, like whatever. So most often it may be overlooked or overrated, as I said. And that is what makes it very, very dangerous. Why? Because since it is not physical, even though in the long run it affects the physical, it is more of emotional, psychological, or let's say mental abuse and trauma. Many people tend to neglect it. So it's a double neglect. And that is why we need to join our voices and raise the voices against child neglect in particular, even though we have to decry neglect in general. Why in particular in children? Because children are more vulnerable, and most often they may be afraid to express themselves, or they may not have the most appropriate ways of expressing themselves. So neglect, especially child neglect, should or must be looked into. We need to really emphasize on that because, like I said already, it eats up our emotional, our mental health a lot, and which plays another very, very negative impact even on our physical health. And that is why in children, we have to be very observant. It is in observing them, paying special attention on these children, that you may even know if they are suffering from some kind of neglect or the other. And if we are just too busy with our very, very busy lives, as it is fast becoming, we may miss out on this. And that is why from time to time, we insist, even as we teach people, even as we go about sensitizing the world, we encourage each and every one of us to implement and practice some healthy habits in our homes. For example, when it is time to be on the table, we switch off the TVs and we sit on the table. We keep away our mobile phones. We should not even have them around, because when we have them around, we would not only be tempted not to concentrate on our food, but we may be tempted as well to be so distracted and also neglect our own very selves. And once you are neglected, you cannot take care of another person. It takes you to be loved and to love, to be able to love another. You cannot give out what you don't have. So we need to work on ourselves, heal ourselves, get rid of all the consequences. If at all we cannot get rid of all the consequences of the child abuse, trauma, and neglect we have, we do our best and we are aware and conscious of what we have gone through. It will help us. It will help us so much to be able to help these children not to go through the same torment we went through. It begins with us. Let's heal ourselves. Let's forgive ourselves. Let's forgive others so that we would not just want love, we would be love ourselves. We would be joy. We would be patient. We would be endurance. We would be all the positive attributes that we're looking out there, and we'll be able to emit them to these our children. We'll be able to contaminate them with our positive energy, our positive vibrations. It's so easy, so simple. Once you are what you want to be, that is the I am love, I am beautiful, I am great, I am successful, I am an overcomer, I am more than victorious, and all of that. Once you are that, it will better help you to raise these children, whether they are yours or even children you meet at any point in time. You'll be able to spread that love to them because they must have come in contact with you. That is love that they want. And we should also, to conclude, we should also be able to easily forgive anybody or child we come in contact with who is rash, who is, say, always sad and angry and all of that. It is what that child is, because we only give out what we have. So if you meet a child who is repulsive, who is angry, revengeful, don't blame that child. Rather know that that child needs help. That child needs attention. That child has gone through a lot. And it takes you who have all what that child needs. It takes you who is a solution to that child to reach out to the child with the solution that you are, not that you have. You are the solution. Reach out to the child with the solution that you are. You are love. You are beauty. You are peace. You are serenity. You are calmness and all of that. And we would have a wonderful world.
Thank you, Patricia. That was good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're before we close, because I forgot to do it in the beginning. So we're here to break this child neglect, but we have to tell the people from what countries are we from. So I'm from Cyprus, Europe. Nicole?
I'm South African, but I'm living in Greece.
David?
I'm Canadian, Western Canada, British Columbia.
And Patricia?
I'm Cameroonian and presently in Cameroon.
That's really great. So if any of our viewers want to join us in this kind of discussions that we're trying to break this chain of trauma, child trauma, and we were affected, and we're not here to blame the parents because our parents or our ancestors. We're just here to break this chain and bring like Patricia said, love and all that in the world, and make this world a better place. So thank you very much for joining me, and thank you to our viewers that are listening, and see you in another edition.